Les Trois Vallées is a ski domain that's constantly in motion. As the world's largest ski area, it features monstrous numbers of pistes, lifts, and facilities, and sees vast volumes of visitors each season. With the Olympics on the horizon and snow sports as popular as ever, it's no surprise that this ski domain constructs and updates its facilities nearly every off-season. Today, we're going to take a look back at some of the recent history of Les Trois Vallées' modernizations and all of the exciting projects on the horizon. This is how Les Trois Vallées is moving into the future. Despite being the largest interconnected ski domain on Earth, investment at Les Trois Vallées is permitted, funded, and conducted in a wide variety of regulatory and operational zones. Even the ski domain itself is split up into several different sectors with different ownership. So all that's to say that each piece of the Trois Vallées puzzle is different. Various communes have different visions for the future, but the one thing they have in common is they have their eyes on growth. One last thing, a huge thank you to Skifan for providing several of the images in this video. The original photos on Flickr are linked in the description, and you can go check out his profile for more excellent photos of all the happenings at Les Trois Vallées. All that said, let's jump into the projects themselves. In 2024, the company that runs the skiable domain of Val Thorens, Cime, constructed a new 10-person gondola to replace the Deux detachable quad. With a capacity of 3,500 people per hour compared to 2,400 on the old quad, this lift was designed to alleviate the long queues seen in years past. Its alignment was redirected to place the mountain terminal adjacent to that of the Moutière chairlift, offering direct access to the Grand Fond and Cime Caron that would have previously required a second lift ride. So far, the project has been a major success in improving skier circulation in the lower half of Val Thorens. However, the new Deux gondola isn't just replacing a lift, it's part of a complete redevelopment of the entrance to Val Thorens. In 2025, the commune of Les Belles approved a new plan local d'urbanisme allowing massive expansion of tourist accommodation in the Plateau du Cairn. As we speak, an entirely new sector of Val Thorens is being constructed adjacent to the valley terminal of Deux, making it clear that the gondola was designed not only to improve skier circulation, but also to anchor this new development. While Deux now provides a direct route toward Grand Fond and Cime Caron from this village, many skiers will continue to prefer the neighboring Moutière chairlift because it avoids taking skis off. Interestingly, a 2023 environmental review reveals that Cime had already planned to replace Moutière with a 10-person gondola as a sister ship to Deux. The reviewers, however, criticized the proposal because no detailed design or environmental analysis had yet been submitted. The review also notes that no alignment had yet been selected, leaving open the possibility that the replacement could follow a different route through the lower slopes of Val Thorens. Of course, we'd personally love to see Moutière remain as a chairlift, preserving skiers' ability to choose between the comfort of a gondola and the convenience of keeping their skis on. Since the 2023 document, we haven't been able to find any official updates, but with the Plateau du Cairn redevelopment now well underway, we suspect the Moutière replacement will resurface sooner rather than later. Of course, Deux and Moutière aren't the only projects undertaken by Cime, and they sure do seem to love their gondolas. In 2025, they constructed a new 10-person gondola as an infill lift between Moraine and the Col de Thorens, augmenting the existing Funitel de Thorens. This lift also revitalized the Aster Red Piste and was accompanied the year prior by the construction of the new Face Nord Bleu. While it does have a low capacity and one could make an argument about the choice of a gondola for the lift, it has unquestionably helped ease access to the Col de Thorens and down into Aurel via the Laurie Bleu. On the other hand, it has significantly increased crowds on Laurie, making that trail less enjoyable, so it is a mixed bag. With the inconvenience of taking off and putting on skis for a gondola, in addition to the higher crowds on Laurie, we're not the biggest fans of the Face Nord project. Also providing access to Aurel, the Cime Caron tram was reopened for the 2025-26 season after being heavily damaged in an accident in November of 2024. It received new cabins while maintaining the classic experience expected of this iconic lift. Overall, this was a huge success, and its capacity remains augmented by the Aurel Caron gondola, a 2021 install. Finally, for Val Thorens, there has been quite a bit of buzz in online circles recently regarding a potential replacement for the Trois Vallées quad. As the primary way to access the other ski resorts in the domain from Val Thorens, Vallées consistently sees the longest wait time at the resort. The parallel Funitel de Vallées isn't much help, so a new 6 or 8-seater chairlift in this alignment would be greatly beneficial. However, given Setam's recent history, a 10-person gondola would not be surprising, although perhaps a bit disappointing. Leaving Val Thorens behind, the focus shifts from new developments to one of the domain's biggest capacity bottlenecks. There is only one major project in Les Menuires that we could find published plans for, but it's quite possibly the biggest of this whole video: the return of gondola service to the Mont de la Chambre alignment. As it stands currently, by far the most popular way to depart Les Menuires is via the Col de la Chambre, which offers the easiest way both to Val Thorens and Méribel. This summit, however, is served by only 2 lifts: the 1987 Bruyère gondola and the 2001 Mont de la Chambre Bubble 6-pack. Each of these lifts features a capacity somewhere in the range of 2,400 people per hour, which is significantly lower than many newer lifts of the same size. And while there are other concerns, such as wind resistance and enclosure from the elements, the primary issue with both of these lifts are the massive crowds they see at busy times. Mont de la Chambre loads at the same point as both the Menuires 6-pack and the Durand quad unload. Quite simply, it's a math problem. To counter this issue, the operator of Les Menuires, Vallées, is to construct a massive 10-person gondola that will run from the bottom of the Mas sector to a mid-station at the current Mont de la Chambre Valley terminal, and will then follow the old trace to the Col de la Chambre. In addition to replacing the Mont de la Chambre 6-pack, it will replace the 1998 Durand detachable quad, and will feature a mammoth capacity of 3,600 people per hour. The mountain terminal of the new gondola will be slightly to the south of the existing chairlifts terminal, allowing for easier access to Val Thorens and Lac de la Chambre. Construction on this lift is set to commence shortly, and the lower section replacing Durand should be open for the 27-28 season. After another year's work, the full gondola will be available in late 2028. However, while on paper this seems like a nice upgrade, there is a glaring issue with the project. It neglects the Croisette. Nowadays, most skiers in the Croisette sector begin their journey by taking the Menuires chairlift to the Mont de la Chambre chair. With the new gondola, future skiers unloading Menuires will then be asked to load the gondola at the mid-station, a feat much easier said than accomplished. Bruyère offers an example of what we could see from the Mont de la Chambre gondola's mid-station. In the morning, it is nearly impossible to load at the Bruyère mid-station because every cabin is filled to the brim from the valley. Now, the planning documents explain that the new Mont de la Chambre will keep some cabins closed at its valley station in order to send them empty to the mid. However, in our experience, nearly every single lift that sends empty carriers to be loaded at a mid-station still allocates significantly more capacity to its valley, often with only every 4th or 5th carrier going empty. The current circulation sees vastly more skiers coming to Mont de la Chambre from La Croisette via Menuires than it does from Mas via Durand. But this project risks significantly changing that balance by pushing skiers to venture to the Mas sector in order to wait in a shorter line for the gondola. The route from La Croisette to the Mas bottom is a narrow traverse that already has issues with crowding and snow quality. Placing even more demand on this route could turn it into one of the worst pistes in the entire domain. In actuality, this project is trying to accomplish too many things. By replacing Durand and Mont de la Chambre, it risks fundamentally changing skier circulation in Les Menuires for the worse. It is worth noting that this is not the first time that Vallées has replaced multiple lifts with a single one. 2021's installation of the Pointe de la Mas gondola generally replaced 4 lifts, 1 gondola and 1 chairlift each for the top and bottom half of the Mas sector. While providing a significantly faster ride from bottom to top, this installation eliminated the possibility of lapping the upper slopes on their own, forcing skiers to ski the often slushy bottom half of the sector to get back to a lift. So while it has been a success by some measure, it has also left some frustrations with skiers. In the same way, while the new Mont de la Chambre will likely alleviate crowds and decrease wind closures to some degree, we foresee it creating several new problems to be addressed later on. Of course, there absolutely remains the possibility that the operator can find just the right balance of capacity allocation between the valley and middle stations, decreasing the lines seen at both and keeping skier circulation relatively unchanged. We can only hope for that latter scenario. Over a Valley and Méribel, the projects are not quite as massive as in Les Menuires, but there's still quite a bit to cover. First up is the Côte Brune Gondola, a lift built in 2025 to replace the long-maligned detachable quad that stood in the alignment previously. The old lift, a 1991 install, had a relatively low capacity, and while it was detachable, in recent years it hadn't run particularly fast. Given that it is the primary route from Méribel to Val Thorens, something newer, more reliable, higher capacity, and more comfortable was necessary. As such, operator Société des Trois Vallées, S3V, chose a fast 10-person gondola with a capacity of 2,800 people per hour to replace it. There could once again be the discussion of the merit of having constructed a new chairlift in lieu of a gondola, but it is unquestionable that the cabins provide some needed relief to what was consistently one of the coldest and windiest lifts in Méribel. One interesting feature of the new gondola is that while it features common ski slots in the cabin floor, it also has a few racks on the wall for wider skis that don't fit in the floor slots. By and large, throughout this past season, the new gondola worked efficiently and effectively. It was a solid upgrade, and one that should continue to pay off as time goes on. While there weren't any official future plans we could find for projects in Méribel Mottaret, as we speak, repairs are underway on the Chatelet chairlift, which was damaged in an avalanche in the 2025-26 season. Likely the most pressing concern for the coming years will be the Pas du Lac gondola. We'll cover some examples in just a minute, but given the renovations taking place at other gondolas across the domain, this would likely be an extensive renovation rather than a full replacement. While Pas du Lac is prone to long lines at times, we would argue that a third lift running up the Saulire sector would be more beneficial and cost-effective than trying to replace Pas du Lac entirely. Now, Méribel is one of the odd ones when it comes to ownership because, contrary to popular belief and what would be the most logical conclusion, the Société des Trois Vallées only operates the upper, Mottaret, half of the valley. The lower lifts and pistes are run by Méribel Alpina, a subsidiary of the multi-mountain Compagnie des Alpes. Similarly to S3V, Méribel Alpina doesn't have any massive projects in the works at the moment. Outside of a rebuild of the Olympe Gondola's Valley Station building in Bride-les-Bains, the only recent project of note is the renovation of the Rhodos gondola, which has been undertaken in phases over the summers of 2025 and 2026. The renovation replaced many critical parts of the lift to ensure reliability, along with new terminal buildings and cabins for guest comfort. As an isolated project, this seems like it shouldn't have been high on the priority list. After all, very few guests take Rhodos, as it primarily serves as access to the Altiport learning terrain. However, the Rhodos upgrade is more than a standalone project, as it anchors the redevelopment of the Rond-Point area. Currently, there are several green pistes that travel to the Rhodos mid-station. They don't, however, continue past that to the Rond-Point, a crowded and popular sector of Méribel. Additionally, the only piste to descend from the Rond-Point is the Bleu d'Oron, which gets quite busy and icy or slushy. As such, beginners struggle to access the Rond-Point due to the disconnect between the sector itself and the mid-station, which is a few hundred meters uphill. The goal of the redevelopment is to improve this connection, and by extension the connection to La Chaudaine, by constructing a small tram to connect the Rond-Point and Rhodos mid-station, cutting a new green trail from the mid-station down to the Rond-Point, and removing the Adret chairlift. The tram and Rhodos would likely see their hours extended into the evenings to allow them to augment or replace the current shuttle bus system for pedestrians. This whole redevelopment is a fascinating change in philosophy, as rather than purely adding uphill capacity as seen in Val Thorens, Méribel is trying to redesign its pedestrian and skier circulation issues simultaneously without constructing anything massive. Almost all of this makes plenty of sense, but we're a bit disappointed to see Adret's death sentence. Adret and the neighboring Dont de Bergen chairlift serve some excellent underutilized intermediate pistes that are some of our favorites in Méribel. We would have loved to see a push for these sectors to be revitalized, but the existing Adret chairlift crosses at effectively the same elevation as is necessary to build the tram, forcing the company to choose between one or the other. Additionally, the removal of Adret will offer space to widen the Doron Bleu. And finally, we arrive at Courchevel. In addition to Méribel Mottaret, Courchevel and the sub-resort of La Tania are run by S3V. Courchevel is the only resort in the domain that is a venue for the 2030 Olympic Games, and as such, it may have a few more projects planned for the coming years that we were unable to uncover. As it stands, however, there are a few major developments. The first of these occurred in the 2024-25 season, the long-anticipated reopening of the Saulire tram, which had been closed for the previous 3 years for renovation. While not the most critical lift in the network, the Saulire is a Courchevel icon, and it's good to have it back. Down at the main base of Courchevel 1850, another icon finally reached the end of its reign, the 1969 Chenus gondola. After having anchored the heart of Courchevel for so long, it was time for Chenus to be replaced, and to do so, S3V chose a 10-seater with double the capacity of the old and a significantly shorter ride time. It also chose to place the new Valley terminal in a location with slightly easier access from the Front de Neige. On top of that, the new Chenus also replaced the Côte detachable quad, which had seldom run in recent years. By and large, this project has been a success, providing a quicker, easier, and more comfortable ride up to some of Courchevel's best carving red trails. Here in 2026, another gondola project is underway in the village of Tania to renovate its gondola. Similarly to Rhodos, it will feature an overhaul of machinery, cabins, and buildings in order to make it more comfortable and reliable. The old cabins were an odd hybrid that were uncomfortable and awkward both to stand or sit in, especially for pedestrians. Ahead of an Olympics where many spectators will likely use the gondola, it's important to revitalize this lift. And of course, it'll make it nicer to lap the forested pistes of Tania and offer a more impressive start to the day for those staying in the village. Our final project to discuss for this video is one that's been talked about for many years, the Bozel gondola. This project finally gained some momentum at the start of this decade as feasibility studies, alignment decisions, and other planning phases commenced. Now, in 2026, there exists an official plan and timeline for the project known as the Ascenseur Valléen. It'll be a 10-person gondola with a fairly low capacity, rising a quick 7 minutes from Bozel to Courchevel 1550 via an intermediate station in Cime. From that top terminal, skiers can immediately clip in to take the Tove chairlift, while pedestrians can walk a quick few minutes to the Grand Jet gondola to access the main village of Courchevel. Notably, this lift will not make for incredibly fast access for skiers, as to venture to Méribel or beyond, it'll require at least 3 additional lift rides from the top of the Ascenseur. However, as the name Valley Lift implies, this project is designed primarily for pedestrian movement and to decrease utilization of the Courchevel access road. As such, it will be key for movement during the Olympic Games, playing a large part in traffic reduction. This project also mirrors the Olympe gondola in the Méribel Valley, which connects Brie-les-Bains, Les Alleux, Le Raffort, and Méribel Centre. While these communities have taken advantage of the gondola connection for decades, the Bozel gondola is slated to commence service in December of 2029, just in time for the Olympics. We would imagine this opening will be a highly anticipated date for the communities served by the new gondola. Interestingly, the gondola plans include some pretty detailed landscaping to connect the existing Cime red piste to the new intermediate station. While we're not certain, we're fairly confident the Cime does not have any snowmaking, and as such question the merit of doing so much earthwork to connect a piste that currently opens for only a few good days per season. Disregarding the question of the piste, however, this is a project that could be as transformative as any, with construction planned to start in April of 2028. Through all of the projects discussed here, one can see all of the aspects that go into developing and maintaining a ski domain of this magnitude. Despite the lengthy timelines for many of these developments, it's clear that the communes and operators of Les Vallées are committed to growth. From gondolas preceding entire developments to pure lift replacements to communities seeing entirely novel connections, this is the future of Les Vallées. Of course, as mentioned throughout, these were only the projects we were able to find documentation for, and there are plenty of rumors floating around about what else could be next. But, for the world's largest ski area, standing still has never been an option, and if these projects are any indication, Les Vallées has no intention of slowing down. On behalf of all of SRG Skiing, I'd like to thank you for watching this video. We'd love to hear all of your thoughts about the development in Les Vallées down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video or found it informative, please consider subscribing to help support the channel. All my love, I'm out.